And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside once again by Andrew Johnson, as Week 4 in the National Football League season has concluded, a couple of days away from Week number 5 kicking off coming this Thursday night. And a lot to take in from this past week in Week number 4, Johnson. We saw a high-scoring affair, and at least one of the two Monday night games that just happened as of last night, as of this recording. A monster win on Sunday Night Football for Baltimore. A couple also weird games as well on Sunday. We saw now just two remaining undefeated teams in the National Football League. After going into the week, we had five. A walk-off field goal win for a divisional matchup, and we saw a big injury to a quarterback, leading to a quarterback change in one of the games that led one of the other teams being now not winless, not undefeated anymore, and as well as some breaking news earlier on today about a certain star wide receiver potentially getting traded. So a lot to break down here in the show tonight.
All this and more, and I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. Those two teams will both be in prime time this week. Those undefeated teams. So it'll be very interesting to see how these teams respond because I think one of them is repeatedly disrespected and one is being overrated, and it'll be interesting to see how both of those teams continue on and see how long they can stay undefeated for. Because I think it's got to be coming soon. There's no way they can both keep this up.
And as we're talking about this, I'm also currently watching the Mets play their wild card game against the Brewers. They're going into the bottom of the fifth inning in that game. But going back into baseball, football? Excuse me. Let's talk about the Thursday night game. Unfortunately, Johnson, for me, between the Dallas Cowboys and the Giants last Thursday night. And I will say this, as you know, the Giants did lose this game. They did look good for the most part in this game. Very winnable game for New York in this one against Dallas. A little bit of some secondary issues earlier on in this one against CeeDee Lamb. They really picked it up in the second half defensively. And the biggest, things that didn't go right for the Giants in this game, they couldn't run the football, which was a big, point of emphasis for what Dallas has been struggling against this season. So that's definitely a cause for concern, considering that the Giants were actually doing a decent job of running the football going into this game. And they really could have hit on the big playability in this one as well. Daniel Jones, a lot of his throws were pretty much underneath throws, mostly check down throws. And he didn't play a terrible game. He played an all right game, but not being able to hit some open passes where, we saw one where Malik Neighbors could have had a walk-in touchdown, kind of underthrew the ball, got the completion to him regardless, but it could have been an easy six for the Giants, who realistically obviously needed the touchdown in this game. It cost them in this one as they only were able to kick field goals in this one against the Cowboys. They lose by the final of 20-15. Dallas now goes to 2-2 on the season. The Giants now falling to an unfortunate 1-3 start. And a lot, it's tough because they easily could be a team that right now could be 3-1 had not be for that situation in Washington where they didn't have a kicker. They didn't have a backup kicker for that week after Graham Gano was initially already hurt. Then they could have won this game, and then obviously they beat Cleveland the previous week. So rough going of things for the Giants. They are looking competitive at least, which is a good thing for me, but they just are still not finding ways to win games, which is really kind of frustrating as a fan to see.
Yeah, I was actually live in Houston, Texas for this game. Not at the game, obviously, because I was in New York, but I was in Texas watching it out, and you wouldn't believe how receptive they were of Giants fans in Texas. Now, granted, it was Houston, not Dallas, but it just goes. I would say it was a split crowd, either people there with Giants gear or cheering for the Giants, probably just disgruntled Texans fans and Cowboy fans. So I was very surprised to have a mixed crowd down there in Texas for this game. But you said it best. The Giants can't seem to put teams away. They have opportunity after opportunity, which you think they're going to win this game. Maybe this is going to be the game they win, and they just seem they can't get it done. So, uh, bright spots. Malik Neighbors looks really good. Wandale Robinson actually looks really good as a secondary wide receiver. I know he's not the main guy, but he's actually looked pretty good so far. So I would like to see how he kind of progresses as the season goes on, especially with Malik Neighbors being there, take a lot of pressure off him.
Yeah.
Uh, Daniel Jones has actually looked like a quarterback these last couple games. He still has his faults, but he's looked a lot better from that first game. That first game, he was absolutely horrific. And in the Dallas and Cleveland games, he actually looked like a passable NFL quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing for us as being a Giants fan is that Neighbors has looked phenomenal these first couple of weeks of the season, which is great. Um, Leads the NFL in receptions. He's top five, maybe top two, even in receiving yards. Has a couple of touchdowns already as well. Did suffer a concussion at near the end of this game, which is a little bit concerning. His status is in the air for this upcoming weekend against Seattle, which is going to be a tough game. And we'll talk about their game this previous week. And we'll have to see what they go from here. I mean, if they're able to get a win in Seattle, that's great. But I don't like their chances just because they're going into Seattle for that game. That's never an easy place to play in. So, still a very long year, but it's just been unfortunately the same thing for the Giants the last couple of years, where they've had chances to win these games and they just can't, find that one thing that get them the win. It seems as if it's a different thing every other week for this team. Not having a kicker one week, not being able to throw a deep ball to get a touchdown play on a basic streak route where Neighbors, pretty much breaks the ankles of one of the Cowboy corners and is left wide open with no one in sight. It like I said, it's kind of frustrating because they can win these games and they're just not capitalizing and winning, and
But
that's why they're one
if
and
you're a
three.
Giants fan, it's not as frustrating because you knew this was a punt year anyway. You had
Yeah,
no
we weren't
expectations to
expecting
compete.
playoffs.
You wanted to tank. You want to get either a future quarterback or you want another piece for a potential future quarterback. We've said this before. Quinn Ewers looks appetizing. Carson Beck may have taken a step back. Arch Manning maybe next year could be on the menu. There's a lot of different options at quarterback for the next year or two. You could even, if the Vikings keep this up, spoiler alert, they're 4-0 now. If the Vikings keep this up, they may just want to keep Sam Darnold, and you could trade for J.J. McCarthy. So there's a lot of avenues go down here postseason for the Giants, and you want to see this fight. You want to see progress, but you don't want to see wins. If that's crazy to say,
Yeah, I think it's all about development, seeing what you have for the near future. The problem is going to be at the end of the season, what's that future going to look like? Are you going to still have your head coach and GM? Are you still going to, I don't really want Daniel Jones to be the quarterback next year, but is he going to be the guy again next season? Because with all that uncertainty in the offseason, are you looking at a quarterback in the draft? I'm not particularly keen on going after one. I feel like this is not the greatest draft class per se going into this upcoming season. And there probably is other stuff they could look at. I know there's issues in the secondary still where they could really use a number one boundary corner because I like Deontay Banks, but he really isn't that guy that could play the top tier receivers like you saw in this game against CD Lamb. He kind of struggled for a little bit, which is a little bit concerning for your former first round pick. He hasn't been bad, but he's not really that number one corner that you would hope for that could be the shutdown guy in your team. So maybe they go into the offseason where, depending on how the rest of the season goes, because if they keep playing competitively, they'll keep themselves in these games and maybe they can sneak out a win or two here and there. And it might, I don't want to say it's going to screw them out of getting a quarterback in the draft, but like I said, I would rather just not get a quarterback this year. I really don't know what quarterback I would even want to take in this draft if it were to come to that. You
Quinn
know,
Ewers,
I, I, I don't even know if I would want him. That's the problem.
really.
I think it's crazy to think, guys. I wouldn't have thought this last year, but if Jalen Milroe from Bama continues to play the way he's playing, I mean, why not? I mean, it's worked with a former running quarterback when Dable was with Buffalo with Josh Allen. I mean, it could work. I don't know if it will work, but I guess crazier things have been done before. So, like I said, I wouldn't mind Ewers. It's just I've always been like, it's not easy to say. Like, obviously I would like Arch Manning, but that's 2 years from now. It's not like, oh,
Hype
you know
train right
what?
now.
It's not like, oh, next year we could get Arch. You have to wait 2 years to get him. And even then, are you going to be guaranteed to get him? That means you're going to have to suck again next season. So I don't know. And then you mentioned, the Vikings. I don't even know what that situation is going to be because Darnold's playing great right now. You did just, use a top 10 pick of JJ McCarthy. So what do you do with him? I'm not so
It's a
sure.
good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have. That is great. It's a great problem to have if you're a team like that. And I guess it's a good segue for us to go into our next game, which involves those Minnesota Vikings. And what a start to this game they had, Johnson. They were dominating the Packers throughout the entire first half of this one, a key divisional matchup, up 28 to nothing with 5 minutes left in that first half. They did have a little bit of a special teams mishap before the half, then that led the Packers to getting on the board for the first time this game. It was a 28 to 7 lead for Minnesota going into halftime. The Packers, though, in the fourth quarter would make this one very interesting. A couple of touchdown passes from Jordan Love, and three of them actually in that fourth quarter, making it a 2-point game at the very end. Unfortunately, the Packers were not able to recover the onside kick. They lose this game by 2. And a lot of things went wrong for them, unfortunately, that first half. Jordan Love threw a couple of interceptions, which you unfortunately don't really want to see in his first game back, but he still had a good game overall. And a common theme as well for the Packers for what seems to be now pretty much a decade now, kicking issues. 2 missed field goals in this game. Obviously, with the way the difference of this game was, you realistically could have used one of those field goals because it just been a common theme. They had Carlson last season as their kicker. They cut him in the preseason after a rough preseason going. They had Greg Joseph, who's now on the Giants now, as their kicker. He also had a bad preseason and hasn't. And other than the game he had on Thursday, he was not looking great for the Giants either. And then their guy now, Narvison, misses 2 in this one, and it hurts the Packers. They now fall to 2-2. And like we said, give your tip of the cap to the Vikings. 4-0, one of the last remaining undefeated teams in the NFL. And Sam Darnold just continues to play at a very high level so far in this season.
Yeah, you really have to tip your cap here because they keep on being underestimated. They have done they have smashed all expectations, and you would figure 3 weeks into the season, that's not like a listen, I know 3 weeks in almost every other sport is not a long time. 3 weeks in the NFL, you're pretty much almost a quarter of the way done with the season. So when you're at that 3-4 week mark in the NFL, this is who your team's probably going to be. Yes, you could have teams that are injured, you could be missing key guys, etc., etc. But in a lot of cases, this is who you're going to be now for the rest of the season in cases like this. So when Sam Darnold 2 or 3 weeks in was performing like this, unless he, God forbid he tears an ACL, someone tears an ACL, someone's injured, whatever happens that keeps these guys from playing football, this is who they really are. I mean, you've seen the historic collapses year after year, but you kind of have to figure in the modern NFL, how often does that actually happen?
Right. I mean, listen, it's not that it could happen. It very much well could. Um, but what they're doing right now is they're beating teams that you wouldn't expect. Like they beat in the Niners already. They beat in the Texans. They now just beat the Packers, and that's where what has been really good about the Vikings because they're beating teams that no one really expected them to beat once this season started. They have another big game upcoming this weekend in London, which we'll preview later on in the show, which is another game that probably going into the season you didn't expect them to probably be the favorite and win that game, but right now they are that indeed going into that game against the Jets. But I think, also looking at what their team is, their defense has been one of the better ones in the NFL. Other than the second half of this game, they were playing phenomenal. The only concern was that second half did happen and they almost let that game slip away from them. But they were able to hold on at the very end, and their defense was a big reason why they were able to hold on. If they don't force 3 interceptions on Jordan Love, the Packers probably come back and pull off one of the more thrilling upsets we've seen in recent memory. So that's why the Vikings are kind of a good mesh of a balanced team right now. They're getting enough offensive style points while their defense is forcing turnovers on the other side of things.
Yeah, and I think we go into our next game now. Let's talk about the Anthony Richardson and the Colts. I guess I can say Anthony Richardson won this game because he started, but he certainly didn't finish it.
He did not finish it, but I know someone, Johnson, that you know very well that finished this game. Who finished this game for the Colts as their quarterback?
That would be Joe Elite, Joe Flacco, future Hall of Famer Joe Flacco. Put respect on his name. Still at the ripe age of 40 or 41.
I think he's 41.
He's 41
I
now, so
think
at the
so.
ripe age of 41. He is still putting up MVP caliber performances week in and week out for his fans. So I'm excited by this. I mean, it's Flacco, man. Like, he led this team, a team that was unbeaten in the Steelers, who played a very good game offensively, by the way. Justin Fields probably had the best offensive game of his season,
Yeah,
maybe of his career so far. He
if
was
you had
just
him in fantasy,
absolutely
go ahead.
passing the ball, rushing. He made the right reads. He was just an overall phenomenal performance. But the Colts managed to steal this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you had Justin Fields in fantasy, he was the quarterback one in fantasy this week in terms of scoring. Had a 300-yard game, passing touchdown, and two rushing touchdowns at the end as well. But the difference in this game was the Colts had a very good start to this game. They were up 14-0 going into the second quarter, and that was when Anthony Richardson got hurt. He got hurt after Indianapolis went up 7-0. Flacco would get the passing touchdown to put them up 14-0. And I mean, the good thing for Colts, I guess from this is again going to fantasy related because you finally saw a monster game out of Michael Pittman, which you haven't seen all season so far. Um, Maybe the other concern for this game is Richardson might be out for a couple weeks, maybe just a week or two. But they also did lose Jonathan Taylor in this game to an injury, and we don't know what his status is as of yet. So hopefully they are able to get him healthy and he's able to play this upcoming weekend. But they were able to scratch out and claw their way to the victory over the Steelers, handing them their first loss of the season. And as you mentioned, it was by far the Steelers' best offensive game they've had, not only this season, but probably in the last 10, 15 games dating back to last season as well. So maybe that's a good sign of things to come for the Steelers offense as long as they keep going to Justin Fields. He's going to probably start again on Sunday against the Cowboys, but we'll have to see now what the status of Richardson's going to be and what the Colts are going to look like now as an identity with Joe Flacco because we saw what he did last year for Cleveland, getting them to a postseason berth.
Yeah, it's not the same injury as last year. He had a shoulder injury last year. He has a hip injury right now.
Yeah,
I would guess he's going to miss a couple games. Does he go on the IR? I'm not really sure about that.
I wouldn't think so.
Uh, I don't think he would either, but stranger things have happened in the NFL. But if he misses 3 games, I don't know what they do. And if they keep on winning games with Joe Flacco, I'm sorry. I like Anthony Richardson. He has to take a back seat to this.
It's very possible it could
That may
happen.
sound crazy, but I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's you have to ride with the hot hand and see what works for you. I mean, if the Colts offense is rejuvenated the next couple of weeks, because I mean, look what's happened with Carolina. Yes, they've lost last week, but their offense looks so much better with Andy Dalton now at quarterback. So it's like you have to roll with what's working for your offense best right now. You don't want to have a minor setback and put your offense back to where you were to start the season. So that very much well could be the case for Indianapolis throughout the next couple of weeks if Flacco does in fact win them some games in the next couple of weeks. Um, Now shifting
But
over.
yeah, I want to talk about one last thing. You saw the way Joe Flacco ran this offense, right?
Mhm.
Like Michael Pittman has been DOA for the last couple of weeks, and he had probably the best game of his season right now.
By far his best game.
I know it's only been one game, but you have to see the way the offense kind of shifted. I like Anthony Richardson. I think he has a lot of potential. He's not afraid to throw the ball deep, but
There's a lot more
uh,
running when you put him in at quarterback.
yeah, there's a lot more running, and the offense is a little bit more wild. So if you want a safe, crafty veteran, stick with Joe Flacco for now.
Right. So we'll see. He probably will start this upcoming week for Indianapolis. But now shifting over into our next game, that is a divisional rivalry game between the Saints and the Falcons that ended in a wild one, Johnson, between these two teams. As the Falcons, for the second time this season, give up the go-ahead score, or they were down with a minute left in this game as Alvin Kamara got a rushing touchdown to put New Orleans up 24-23. But give credit to the Falcons. They got down the field in 5 plays. They only got 30 yards on that drive to put them into field goal range. A 58-yard field goal attempt from Younghoe Koo goes in as time expires. The Falcons once again get a walk-off win as they beat the Saints 26-24. Both teams now going to 2-2 in the season. And for the Falcons, it's a huge win because obviously, you know, going from 1-3 and the Saints going to 3-1 will mean a lot more as the season goes along. But getting this win gives you a little bit more confidence considering what Tampa Bay did to the Eagles this past Sunday. Now you're facing them this upcoming Thursday. They really needed this win over the Saints, and thankfully for them, they were able to get it at the very late stage of this one.
Yeah, we really have to talk about the way the Saints are playing. They've lost a couple of heartbreakers now. They are 2 field goals away from being 4-0 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm not really the biggest Saints fan, but in this case, you kind of have to feel for them just a little bit because that is that is very rough to lose like this. It is I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but man, Young Wei Koo, he made I don't want to say historic field goal, but for him it was history. It's probably the longest field goal he's made of his career so far. And you like Captain Kirk? It's a good feel good story there. It's just it's tough.
The
It's
Falcons are
tough being a Saints fan.
the Falcons are just playing some weird football because, Bijan didn't really have the best game. Kirk Cousins didn't really look too spectacular in this one either. And their defense is doing just enough to win them these games,
I
even
still think
giving
Kirk
up big
Cousins
amount of
hasn't
points.
recovered from the injury yet.
Probably not.
He's still. I don't think he's fully recovered yet. I would hope by maybe November he looks a little bit better, but he's just looked very sluggish on the field.
And well, they're going to need him this Thursday against Tampa because that's an all important game between those two teams, and it's gonna set the tone for what Atlanta could be down the stretch of the year if they're able to make the postseason and maybe even win the NFC South, as a lot of people predicted for this upcoming season. But going into the final game of the Sunday slate, we had the Buffalo Bills going in to Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens, and unfortunately for the Bills in this game, Johnson, they just could not stop Derrick Henry, and you saw it from the very first run of the game from Derrick Henry. 87-yard rushing touchdown to give Baltimore an early lead in this game. The Bills really realistically had no answer for him in this one on the ground. Henry rushes for 199 yards and a rushing touchdown, that one I just mentioned. And another thing also, their defense played phenomenal in this game against Josh Allen. They really gave him a lot of fits. 3 sacks on the day. Really, the Bills could not run the ball either with James Cook. And pretty much a statement win for Baltimore after starting the year 0-2. It looked like at one point maybe they were going to choke this game away, but their defense played dividends and were able to get some turnovers in this one. And they get a 35-10 win over the Bills to now set their mark at 2-2 with the season, as well as handing Buffalo their first loss.
Yeah, Buffalo did not look good this game, and I've said Josh Allen looks like a changed man. I hope he doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't complain if he regressed. Don't get me wrong. Uh, but yeah, he didn't look that sharp this game. He looked kind of lost, but can you really blame him?
No,
Derrick
this
Henry
defense
looks
is great.
unstoppable. Derrick Henry in that Wildcat seems like they figured it out. He looks absolutely. He looks like he can't be stopped.
Yeah, the Ravens are playing that style of football where they're
Smash mouth football.
like you're forced. They ran 34 times again after running 45 the previous week, and 271 yards as a team. That's obviously with Henry's 199, and then Lamar added another 54 and a rushing touchdown himself, and he also threw for 2 passing touchdowns in this game. So I can't really fault Buffalo, because you're starting to see the inklings of what this Baltimore offense is going to look like throughout the rest of the season, and you also know that this defense is really good. Now they had their mishaps at some points in this season. Absolutely, there's no denying that whatsoever. But in this game, it just seemed as if Buffalo realistically couldn't get to that Ravens secondary. Guys like Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, and stuff, and they were not able to get open guys. Khalil Shakir had that big catch that set them up for a touchdown, but that was pretty much it for Buffalo in this game. They realistically were not able to get big plays down the field. And, the biggest thing, obviously Josh Allen, it looked like at one point got hurt. The good news for him is that he was able to play the rest of the game. They did take him out in the later stages just to avoid further injury because it was already a blowout at that point as well. So I think for Buffalo, it you gotta see now how you respond from this game. They have a big game upcoming on Sunday against Houston, so that is a big test for them trying to bounce back from this loss, going into Houston to take on that Texans team that's coming off a thrilling win over Jacksonville on Sunday. But for Baltimore now, they pretty much have changed the direction of their season after starting 0-2. Now they're 2-2. They play Cincinnati on Sunday, which should be a really fun game between those two division rivals. So for the Ravens now, they have a chance to win 3 in a row and now put themselves in a position to be right back at the top of the AFC standings once again.
Yeah, the seat is a lot cooler for the other Harbaugh brother. After starting 0-2, staring down the barrel of, okay, well, now you have to play the Cowboys in week 3, and now you have to play Buffalo he was really looking at 0-4. It is a very realistic possibility that he starts 0-4.
Yeah,
But here we are now.
here we
Here
are
we
now.
are,
Yeah.
uh, completely turning around their season. There's still a long way to go. But with that being said, you got to be optimistic about the future if you're a Ravens fan.
However, the Johnson, there is one team that's right now not very optimistic about their future, and that is the Miami Dolphins. Um,
They're doing great.
I mean, I've seen bad offensive games, especially being a Giants fan, and obviously I can't really speak much after them scoring just field goals on Thursday. But man, they just look like a completely different team since Tua got hurt a couple weeks ago. Started Tyler Huntley in this game against the Tennessee Titans on Monday night. His first start with the team. It was pretty much just the same thing that's been going on for them the last couple of weeks. They're not being able to get any offensive yards. They're trying to do a lot of trickery, and it's not really working out for them as well. Um, and on the other flip of things, their defense kind of struggled in this game. They couldn't really stop the run for the most part. Even with Will Levis getting injured, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for the Titans. Levis threw an interception, then got a first down run, or at least was near a first down run before he got hurt. Mason Rudolph finished the game for the Titans, but as I mentioned, the Titans defense played good, thanks in part to not really having to worry about some of the Dolphins, receivers, because it just seems as if ever since Tua got hurt, it's not really obvious to say that, but Waddle and Hill have just not been the same type of caliber players you expected them to be at the beginning of the season. They really need him to be back at quarterback, and without him, they're pretty much just lost in transition right now. And it's hurt the Dolphins season because they've now gone from a team that maybe had playoff aspirations at the beginning of the season to now probably a team that might be picking in the top 5 of the NFL draft this season, because it just nothing is going right for this team as they fall in this game to the Titans 31-12.
Well, here's the thing: the talent gap. Here's the thing. I said that twice. Here's my first point. Here's my first point. To make the NFL, you have to be an elite at your position, right? So it's not like the mediocre quarterbacks make it, the mediocre running backs make it, or linemen, safeties, whatever. You have to be elite. And not only have to be elite, to get on and stay on the roster, you have to be the elite of the elite. So this is not any shade at the Dolphins QB room, but from NFL talent perspective, right? It's all relative because when we talk about who's talented, we're not talking about talented at football. They're probably anyone who's in the NFL is in the top 1% of the 1% of people who play football.
Right.
But the talent discrepancy in the Dolphins QB room from QB1 Tua to QB2 Tim Boyle to QB3 Tyler Huntley is probably greater than any other QB room in the NFL. Would you agree or not, or would you disagree? Like if you had an Andy Dalton back there, if you had, even though he's hurt, a Russell Wilson as the backup quarterback, if you had Mac Jones in there,
Yeah, the
this
Dolphins would
season would
probably
look a lot different.
the Dolphins would probably be fine if they had one of those guys at quarterback.
Yeah, so the talent discrepancy between it's because it's not
I
Tyreek and
don't
it's
know
not
if
Jalen
it's
Waddle, it's
I
the
don't know if it's
quarterback
the
play.
worst one, because there's a hypothetical, like let's say if Mahomes got hurt for the Chiefs, they would have to start Carson Wentz. So that's
But here's the thing: Carson Wentz is
Carson Wentz is
leagues
fine.
better.
He would be
He
better
is
than what the
leagues better than
Dolphins are.
Tim Boyle.
Yeah, he
That's
would
what I'm trying to say
right.
here.
I'm trying to think of backup quarterbacks. The Dolphins might have the worst backup quarterback room in the
I think
NFL.
they really do, and you know what? I don't want to sound like a jerk or anything, but with Tua's injury history, you kind of have to anticipate
Well,
this.
remember this, and there's a good point for this. A great example for your argument. Look at what happened with the Jets last season. They didn't have a backup quarterback because they kept Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. Their entire trajectory of their season changes that early in the season. They go from potential playoff team, maybe Super Bowl contender. I'm not saying they would be, but that's what people were maybe expecting them to be. He gets hurt. Zach Wilson plays. They win 7 games at best. Then
Okay,
that's why
so
they signed Tyrod Taylor. That's exactly why they
so
signed him in the
I
offseason.
I have a list, and this may be a little bit old, but the backup quarterbacks in I'm not gonna say the teams, but I'm just gonna give you a list of backup quarterbacks and tell me when the Dolphins
Someone's
QB room
okay.
would be better. So tell me when Tim Boyle, Tyler Huntley, whoever it is starting for the
Tyler
Dolphins is
Thompson.
better.
Yeah.
All right. Carson Wentz, Mitch Trubisky, Josh Johnson, Jake Browning, Easton Stick, Cooper Rush, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kenny Pickett, Tyrod Taylor, Davis Mills, Sean Clifford. I think that may be one.
Sean
That might
Clifford,
be one.
yeah, Sean. Well,
That might be one, right?
Malik Willis technically is the backup in Green Bay.
He is.
Yeah.
He is now. So Malik Willis, or would you think? Would you think Malik would be better than those other couple?
Oh yeah, I mean he went 2-0 with the Packers, so I
All right.
100%.
All right. Mac Jones, Sam Howell, Josh Dobbs, Michael Penix, Mike White. Well, Mike White's not the. Is he a fourth string there now?
Where's Mike White even now? I don't even know
I
where
think he got cut.
he
Actually, I
got
think he
cut by
got
the
cut.
Dolphins, but where is he even on a team right now?
I believe Mike White is. I'm pretty sure he's in the NFL still.
I couldn't even tell you where he is if he is on a
I
team.
think he's on the Bills. He's on the Bills practice
Oh,
squad.
okay. Well, I mean they have Trubisky. I'd still take Mike White. I mean
Yeah,
it's crazy because
yeah, I
they had
would.
Mike White.
I had Mike White,
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker, Desmond Ritter, Kyle Trask,
Yeah, it's bad.
Joe Flacco.
I would take Desmond Ritter over these guys.
All right,
That's bad.
Tyson Bagnet from the
Tyson
Bears
Bagent,
last year. I
yeah,
would take.
he
Yeah,
was pretty
well,
good.
Bagent. Yeah,
Yeah, he was pretty good for the Bears. He did decent enough for the Bears last season.
Spencer Rattler. I would take him.
We haven't even seen Rattler play, and I'd still take him.
Yeah, Jameis Winston. Yeah, I would
Hey,
take him. Mason
you want a
Rudolph.
bold take?
Gardner.
I would take
It was
Taysom
Gardner
Hill.
Minshew, but it's Aiden
I
O'Connell
would
right
take
now.
Taysom Hill, and he's not even a quarterback anymore.
Would you take Drake May? Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Marcus Mariota,
yeah,
Drew
100%.
Luck.
Yeah,
It's tough, and we're almost at the end here. Andy Dalton, which is I guess Bryce Young's a backup now. I don't know how Bryce Young would be for him.
I would take Bryce Young over them.
Then you have it was Sam Darnold. He's the starter now, and Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, I
I
think the
don't think so.
backup for the Vikings
I think we could
is
say we just named every single backup quarterback,
the
and we can
Dolphins
say
have the
with
worst one.
confidence maybe there's one or two teams with backup quarterbacks worse than that. Maybe.
I don't think there is. I think they have the worst one.
I
Tyler
think we said one.
had that one. No, because I think we said you were originally saying the Packers, right? But they had Malik Willis.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I would say I would take Malik Willis any day. The issue is Tyler Huntley had that one decent year when Lamar got hurt and he played, and I know he made the Pro Bowl. That is not really saying anything because every single quarterback that season opted out of playing in that game. So by default, someone had to make the Pro Bowl that year, and he made it. He's not. Let's just face facts. He's not that great of a quarterback, and he really isn't that type of a quarterback. You know that the guys you're expecting to throw the ball down the field, try to get some yardage. That's not him. He's a running type of quarterback. He likes to scramble. You saw it in this game, and it just wasn't working. And here's another problem, Johnson. They didn't sign anyone on the offensive line because they had so much cap issues that they lost all of their good offensive linemen. And this offseason, guys like Connor Williams and Robert Hunt, as examples. That's their top two interior offensive linemen they lost in the offseason because they're paying guys like Hill, they're paying guys like Waddle, Tua, Jalen Ramsey. They lost Christian Wilkins on the defensive side because they couldn't pay him either. Like, that's the problem with this team. Teron Armstead, they paid as well. Like, that's the problem. They have no cap space to pay these players. And that's why Tua, yes, he got hurt on a play where it wasn't the offensive line's fault, but they need an offensive line because it's showing in these games without him. If they had a decent enough offensive line as well, maybe they'd be able to sneak out a win here or there. Maybe they'd be a little bit more competitive. But they've looked god awful in the two games without him. They got destroyed by Seattle, and they scored their first touchdown without Tua in this game against the Titans when it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that they were going to lose. They scored it with 3 minutes left, and they were still down 10 points. It was their first touchdown since I think it was the second or third quarter of that game against Buffalo. So they pretty much went a full, 7 to 9 quarters without scoring a touchdown. I mean, like I said, you saw me text someone that's a fan of the Dolphins. You just got to accept the fact that this is going to be a long season for you because it's just not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better, and your only hope is Tua coming back. And even then, I don't think I would rush him back because I think your season's pretty much lost from right here. You might even. Yeah. It's crazy to think you might have to consider trading someone like Tyreek Hill and just getting enough assets and then building for the future because what you have built right now is not working. It hasn't worked for the last couple of years, and it's not getting any better. Like, is quarterback definitely a concern? Yes. But is that the only problem in this team? Absolutely not. They have
Symptoms of a larger
they
problem.
have far bigger issues than only quarterback. That is definitely playing a factor into how them being bad right now. But there are far bigger problems with this team, and it's probably going to cost Mike McDaniel his job. Which, unfortunately, it looked like at first he looked to be like a godsend for this team. Now you're starting to see what he truly looks like as this team's head coach, and he's probably going to get canned for it at the end of the season if they continue to play like this. So it is what it is. But the good thing for us, Johnson, is this wasn't the only Monday Night Football game we had. I will say I'm not a big fan of having double headers on Monday Night Football, but at least this second game,
One game is good.
at least this second game that we had on Monday Night Football gave us a reason to switch away from that first game between the Titans and the Dolphins, and that was a great game between the Seahawks and the Detroit Lions. Back and forth offensive game. I know on the pod last week I said maybe this would be a good defensive showing because both these teams' defenses have been showing out to start the season, but for the most part, these teams when they play each other always get into a shootout. That was once again the case in this one. I almost said Tigers. I'm still in baseball mode right now. The Lions went into halftime with a 21-7 lead. Jared Goff was playing great. They were running the ball efficiently with Gibbs and Montgomery like they usually do. Kenneth Walker got his first start back. He got himself a touchdown before halftime. Had another two in the second half as well. We even saw Amon-Ra St. Brown throw a touchdown pass to Jared Goff. And Jared Goff was the biggest reason that the Lions get the win in this game. 18 for 18 passing, 292, two passing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown, and the Lions are able to hand the Seahawks their first loss of the season, 42-29 the final in this one, as both teams now go to 3-1 in the season.
Yeah, this was crazy because we have a good friend that's near and dear listener to the podcast that needed the score to stay 7-2
Uh,
in order to win
that was
$1,500.
that was
Can you
rough.
please describe to our listeners what happened in the final 2 minutes of the
Okay,
game?
so to paint a picture, the Seahawks were in the red zone. It was 42-27. They turned the ball over on downs, did not score a touchdown. So the Lions were set up, I believe, at their own 5-yard line with the ball up 15 points still. And you mentioned that he needed the 2-7 to get the win. First down, they run the ball. That's expected. I think maybe they were set up to the 1-yard line. I might be phrasing it wrong. I think they were at the 1-yard line, actually. So they run the ball on first down. They get nothing. Second down, they run play action. Jared Goff, it looked like maybe got the ball over the line and was able to avoid a safety. They go to the 2-minute warning. They come back for the 2-minute warning, and they overrule it, saying that his knee was down in the end zone for safety, therefore giving the Seahawks the 9 and the 2. Now, remember, Johnson, he still had a chance if the Seahawks went down the field, got a touchdown in a 2-point conversion. Geno Smith unfortunately throws a red zone interception, and that would end our friend's unfortunate mishap at the end of that game, with the score ending in a 2-9 and him not getting that money, unfortunately.
Yeah, very sad, but this was a great game to watch,
It still was a great game.
From a fan's perspective. Probably the best. I don't want to. I don't want to say best Monday night game because that's kind of hard to paint a picture. But offensive wise, you have to think this is probably one of the better games since you want to think that fabled cheat was a Chiefs Rams a couple of years ago.
Chiefs Rams. It was like 56-53, something like that was the final in that game.
Yeah, it wasn't this high of an offensive explosion, but let's call it 40-30, combining for 70 plus points. That's a good game.
This was on par with the game we had last week with Washington and Cincinnati, where both offenses were clicking, nothing was really going wrong, and you pretty much didn't see the ball get punted or turn the ball over by any of these teams. It happened maybe once or twice for each one of these sides. It was a really good showing for both of them, and that's why they're two of the better teams in the NFL right now, and probably will both be competing for playoff spots come season's end. So a very good showing, and like I said, thankfully we had this game to compensate after having to watch at least the first 30 minutes of the Titans and Dolphins game, because we needed that, because if not, then you were watching any good competent football this past Monday. But I mean,
That's when you watch Monday Night Raw
I,
instead.
I will say at least the Titans Dolphins game was not as bad as the Broncos Jets game that happened on Sunday, because that game was bad. That game was really really bad. And as
Wait, you're
someone,
like 7 forward passes for an average of -1 yards per
I don't
throw. You
I
don't
don't
like
like a
that?
monsoon type of game where both offenses are doing absolutely nothing. And as you mentioned, a quarterback goes into halftime with -7 passing yards, finishes the game with 60 yards passing, and they still somehow win the game. It made no sense whatsoever. But Denver somehow pulled out the win in that game against the Jets. So I, I'll give them that. It's certainly creative. If if there is script writers for the NFL, it's certainly a weird and conventional way to give a team a victory. But I digress. But with that being said, Johnson, now we get into our next part of our show, our favorite part of the show, and that is the mushing hour for this upcoming week number 5. And we are both coming off our best week of the season, especially for you this past week. And you went 7-0 in your picks from
Ca-
last week in week
Call
number
me the
4.
Undertaker because I've got a streak going.
I went 7-4, so I will take that very much, considering I was 10 games under 500 after this week. So you are officially over 500. I still have some work to do going into this weekend. I most
It's it's
likely will
it's
have to do
doable
double
though.
picks again. Yeah, it's very
It's
doable.
doable though.
Still very doable. We have 6 games on the slot for this week, a couple of primetime games, as well as a London game for the first time this season. So, would you like me to take the floor for the first game of the week, or do you want to take the floor?
Please do so.
Okay, I will take the floor for game number 1, and that is the Thursday night game that I mentioned earlier in the show, and that is between two division rivals, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons, as the Bucks go into Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, Georgia. The Falcons go into this game as a 1.5 point favorite. The over/under set at 43.5 in this one. Johnson, who do you have?
Give me Falcons -1.5 here. I think they get the victory at home. Baker Baker Mayfield's had a fantastic season so far, but give me Kirk Cousins to perform in prime time here and they get the job done.
Well, here's the question, Johnson. Are we finally going to have a decent Thursday night game?
Probably not.
Since it, because the first game of the year was good. Now that wasn't an Amazon Thursday night game. Since it's gone to Amazon, we have not had a good game yet. We've had the Bills blow out the Dolphins, the Jets blow out the Patriots, and then the Giants Cowboys game at least was competitive, but it was still not a great game. I hope so, at least for this one. I think this will be a good game between these two teams. I will go with the Falcons money line, and I will also go with the over in this game. I think there'll be a lot of points scored between these two. I hope at least that way it'll make it watchable. But you got a lot of good playmakers in this game, which I think is why I think we'll see a good amount of points in this one. So give me the Falcons to win and the over in this one. What's our next game?
All right. The next game we have is our London game. We have the Vikings are technically home in London. Just take that however you want because NFL scheduling. We have the Jets and Vikings playing in London. The Vikings are 2.5 point favorites. The over under slated at 40.5. I think this is a highly disrespectful line. You have the Vikings coming off of emotional wins against conference rivals, division rivals, uh, blowing out all expectations, and you have the Jets that pretty much laid an egg last week against one of the easiest opponents, or what we think is the easiest opponents in the NFL this season so far. And you give 2.5 points to the Vikings. I think Vikings easily cover this. Vikings -2.5.
I mean, like you said a couple weeks, like I think it was last week you said this. This team, it seems that the NFL just keeps disrespecting the Vikings with some of these lines. They were even an underdog in that game last week to Green Bay. Um, Now this is a game where the Jets probably need to win. Coming off that bad loss as you mentioned to Denver, but you gotta remember what's the biggest storyline going into this game, Johnson.
Say it again.
What's the biggest storyline going into this game?
Uh, Aaron Rodgers is playing against the team that he's going to be playing on in 2 years.
Nope. Well, maybe. Uh, no, it's Sam Darnold's revenge game. He gets to face the Jets for I believe, the first time as the starting quarterback of the opposing team. I could be wrong about that. He might have started with Carolina. I don't remember off the top of my head if he was probably for the Jets when he was the Panthers quarterback. But regardless, he will be facing his former team, the Jets. I also will be going with the Vikings in this game, -2.5, and I will go with the under. These are two of the best defenses, in my opinion, right now in the NFL going. I think you will see a low scoring game in this one between these two teams. So I got the Vikings to cover as well as the under in London this weekend. Next game on our slate shifts us back to the 1 o'clock slate as we have the Buffalo Bills going into Houston to take on the Houston Texans. The Bills are a road favorite in this game by just 1 point, with the over-under set at 47.5. Johnson, the first game for the Bills since trading away Stephon Diggs in the offseason. Does Stephon get his revenge, or do the Bills come on top with the victory?
He does get his revenge. I'm going to take Houston +1 because I think they'll win outright. But if they lose by a point, I'll take that. I'll take that you gave me the point here.
This is probably this has been the toughest game for me to pick. Honestly, in my opinion, I think this game realistically could go either way. I think Diggs will have a really solid game in this one between these two teams, but I think just because I don't know where to go with this one, I'm going to just play it a little bit safe, and I will go with the over in this game. I think there's just too many good offensive playmakers in this one. The Bills are coming off a 10-point performance. You got to believe that they're going to get a lot more points in this game against the Texans. And you got to also believe that Stephon Diggs is going to want to do something really special in this game against the team that he requested a trade from this past offseason. So I expect a lot of points to be scored. I got the over in this one between Buffalo and Houston. What do we have next?
Next game we have the another divisional game here. Baltimore Ravens on the road going into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals are at home. However, Ravens are the favorite. 2.5-point favorites on the road. 50.5 is the slated over under. Give me Bengals +2.5 here. I think Joe Burrow ties it up, so to say. So both teams go to 2-3. Bengals win this game. But since you give me the points, I'll take Bengals +2.5.
I'm gonna go with the Ravens -2.5. I really do think Cincinnati could come out on top with the victory. I still have not. I'm still very concerned that their defense is just playing still horrifically right now, which is why I am not, keen to say that they might win this game. I think it will be close. It probably will come down to a field goal between the two, but I've got the Ravens to cover the -2.5, and I'm just gonna keep it like that because I don't know if there's going to be a lot of points scored, or if Baltimore's defense is just going to play phenomenal once again, like they did this past Sunday night. But speaking of Sunday night, we go now to the next game. That is Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh this week as the Dallas Cowboys go into Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers at home are a 2.5-point favorite. The over/under set at 42.5.
Give me Cowboys +2.5 here. I think that's this is an easy one. Cowboys +2.5.
I think, I could go easily just take Cowboys +2.5 to fully mush them. But I think I think we're gonna have I think we're gonna have a little bit of an upset here, Johnson. I will go with the Steelers -2.5, and I will go with the under in this game. I think the defenses will come out to play in this one, and I expect Justin Fields to have a decent enough game in this one as well to make sure that the Steelers get the victory in this game. So give me Steelers -2.5 as well as the under. What do we have for our final game of this week number 5?
In our primetime game, the Saints are going against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are at home on Monday Night Football. Chiefs are a 5-point favorite. Under is slated at 42.5. Give me Chiefs -5 here because that's what the script told me. Chiefs will have some sort of BS touchdown to win at the last second off a flag, and they move on to 5-0. And I continue to watch my living nightmare come true.
Well, I'll tell you this. The Chiefs are very concerning right now. Without Rashee Rice, I don't know what their team identity is right now at receiver. Maybe you finally see a big game out of Travis Kelce like we haven't seen all season. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I will go with the Saints to cover +7. And I think I'm going to also I think I'm going to go with the under in this one too. I don't really expect a high scoring game between these two teams, and it's a Monday night game, so I feel as if that's probably going to be the case. The Chiefs are probably going to struggle offensively without their top playmaker in Rice. Maybe expect a big game out of Kelce or maybe even Xavier Worthy, but without Rice in this game, it's going to be a little bit struggleish for the Chiefs offense. So I expect a close game maybe. I'll play it safe though, give the Saints +7 and the under as well. So Three unders for me this week. That might be the death of me this upcoming weekend, but who knows? At least it's not. I'm not doing it in college football like I did a couple weeks ago. So maybe I feel a little bit better doing that for the NFL. But that about does it for our Week 5 mushing hour, Johnson. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up here tonight?
Just take us home.
All right, I will take us home. And that is going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Week number 4 is in the books. We now head into week number 5 in the National Football League. Buccaneers and Falcons on Thursday. The first London game of the year between the Jets and the Vikings. We have the Cowboys and Steelers on Sunday night. Saints and the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, as well as Baltimore and Houston and, Buffalo and Houston and Baltimore and Cincinnati. Should be some fun games here on the Sunday, Monday, and Thursday slate. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside with Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy your NFL Sunday.